Alright, today we're going to be removing and replacing the CT board. Step 1, kill the DC power to the generator. Step 2, most important thing you can do, take as many pictures as possible of all the wiring, and when you think you don't have enough pictures, take 2 more. Next step, we're going to open up all these orange tabs and remove all the wires from here. And push them off to the side. So next we're going to remove the Phoenix connectors on the top. From left to right, your first Phoenix connector is going to be the communication to your VCS. The center connector is your communication to your control panel. And the far right connector, this particular generator doesn't have anything on it, but it's your back-end bearing temperature sensor and your fuel level sensor. We're going to snip the zip tie, make it easier to come in and out. So from here, the wiring harness with the Phoenix connectors has a ground wire. You'll need a 7mm and a Phillips head screwdriver to remove it. With all your wires out of the way, to remove the CT board, simply lift up and tilt forwards. There's a locking wedge on the back. For installation, depending on if your generator is a 120 or a 240 volt generator, you have to wire up your back end wires properly. If you didn't take pictures whenever you're taking the CT board apart, you can reference the diagram on the bottom of the CT board. So before installing the CT board, now is a good time to take a picture of the diagram. For installation, put the CT board onto the DIN rail, tilt towards you, tilt back onto the DIN rail, push down, and then give it a quick little pull to make sure it's seated properly. At this point, we'll begin wiring everything back. So the first thing we're going to install is back to our Phoenix connectors. We want to make sure that we have the VCS connector on the far left, the panel in the middle, and if you have the fuel level or the back end sensor, bearing sensor, on the far right. So from here, we'll plug them all in. Make sure they're seated properly. And tighten the screws. We'll get a zip tie, put it into our holder. And I like to have it loosely hanging until we're ready to fully button her up. Tighten up your ground wire. And again, using your 7mm and your Phillips head. All right, once that's tight, go ahead and tighten up the zip tie for the harness. For the 240 generator, installing your back end winding wires, very critical to follow the diagram on the bottom of your CT board. Make sure it matches up with the tag on your generator. So for a 240, H11 from right to left, and H22. H12, H21. And each time you put these wires in, give them a quick little pull to ensure that they're actually seated properly. For your output cables, we're going to go from left to right, beginning with our hot wires, our L1, which is going to be our black wire. And we're going to position you in, pull it down, and again, give it a quick little pull. So our L2 is going to be our red wire. Make sure there's no loose strands of wires. Yep, don't do that. All right, next, your neutral wire. And your PE jumper. If you have a 120 volt generator, you should have a jumper wire, and your back end output wires are going to be different. As well, you're only going to have 3 wires coming for your output cable. Turn your DC power back on, and that's replacing your CT board if you have a 120 or if you have a 240 volt configuration Fischer Panda generator. For more information and further assistance, contact your local Fischer Panda dealer or our service department.